All right, so hi everybody. It's the last one of the session, so thank you for coming. I'm really excited to see all of you. So as you can tell, I'm gonna be sharing 100 random hacks in 25 minutes. So you're gonna get tired. So I know a lot of you are gonna take photos of the screens. If you wanna be able to download these slides, you can get on my website as well at souffrantntim.com. But for now, just try to soak it in, because I'm not just gonna be teaching mindset and hacks, but also different creative ways for you to be able to get customers, build your product, and scale. As stated before, I was able to speak at a lot of global conferences around the world. I first got started building a company called Vendedy, which connects travelers to street markets. It's currently a business case study right now, so as you can imagine, that gave me the bandwidth to be able to explore other opportunities. And now we recently just launched the largest online digital accelerator for startups. Different countries around the world are featured in this program, so if you're interested in any of these things, definitely check out my site for more information. So as you can tell, I've been able to meet a lot of people along the way. Got to meet presidents, celebrities, you name it. It's been a great ride. But the best thing I've learned along these experiences is how to be really creative about not only how to build a product from scratch, but also how to get free press and free capital, how to raise capital just by pitching. So we'll talk about that as well today. Content for today is a lot. We're gonna go over product hacking, growth hacking, press hacking, funding, so you're gonna get tired, okay? But again, try to take as many photos as you can, take notes, share the information, tweet me if you have really good insights from this talk, and this is the pace I'm gonna go, because I'm trying to get you 100 random hacks. So if you could keep up, watch, and everyone's ready? Yeah? All right. So we're gonna dive right in. I'm having a little technical difficulties with the slides. Yeah, so I do have a version of the audio recordings and the slides on my site as packages, so try to take as many notes as possible or photo screenshots, but you can be able to purchase the downloads and recordings on my website, okay? Everyone got that? All right, so I just want to hear a really round of applause for everyone to get started. We're going to get pumped on. This is the last one. I want to hear everyone, yeah? All right, so let's get started. So we're going to start over with 4 different sites that you should bookmark right now for your company. So we already have Michael Siegel came in yesterday. I'm sure you guys heard that kicked it off for the evening, where Y Combinator has been releasing content for free. It's about 10 weeks worth of content, but you can binge it over the weekend. Bookmark it. I guarantee you it'll be a great thing to start with. Now, if you want to be able to have access to founders who have already been troubleshooting marketing and product development, over 20,000 founders from all over the world tell their stories on launchthisyear.com. This is especially targeted towards those procrastinators, or just like, oh, maybe I'll get to it, or maybe if I had the right amount of money, or maybe if I had the right amount of press. Stop with the excuses. Leverage this site. A really good one to look to. Now, Google for Entrepreneurs is a really great network of some of the best startup ecosystems from all over the world. Startup Grind is powered by Google for Entrepreneurs, so you could tell the caliber of networks that's on this database. If you're traveling, because now entrepreneurship is global, right? You're not staying in one destination. So if you want to see what other startup communities you want to get involved with, Google for Entrepreneurs is a good start. Now, email. I know you're probably following a lot of different newsletters from all over the world. It gets overwhelming. The best one to follow is Startup Digest. You pick the cities, the verticals, and any topic that you want to follow. For example, if you're a woman entrepreneur, see what top deals are happening within the ecosystem. This is a great newsletter to follow. So bookmark these 4 sites immediately. And then as you transition from that, once you are able to bookmark these sites, then I want to talk about a startup checklist. So I know it gets overwhelming as founders, being much like, you have to do product, you have to do marketing, you have to do so many different things to build your company. But these are the basics that you need to make sure that you have covered. So first and foremost is your website. If you're paying thousands of dollars to build your website, stop it. Right? There's so many free resources to build a company from scratch with your website, especially with WordPress.org. But the more important thing is to know what traffic is coming to your site. If you don't know about Google Analytics, get it ASAP. It's free for up to 25 sites. Not only are you able to see where your traffic is coming from, but you're also able to know what your traffic is doing on the site. Next, SumoMe. Email is king, ladies and gentlemen, to get access to your customers for them to purchase your product. So you need a way to capture emails when people come to your site, because your site is your best marketing ploy. So SumoMe is a free tool that you can use to gather emails from people coming to your site. Now, part 2, it's already obvious you do need to have social media accounts, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever your customers are. But as a startup founder, list your company in the top directory so investors and press reporters can find you. Gus.com, Unoodle, F6H, Punchbase. If you're not listed there, do it ASAP. That's a great way to sell your profile and give updates on what's going on with your company, especially when you're fundraising. We'll talk about how to leverage these databases to get access to free grants and prizes later on. But again, these are sites to list your company so you could get noticed. Next is admin setup. I'm not going to go too much on this, but just leverage tools like MailChimp to be able to sell really great emails, and Hootsuite if you want to manage multiple social media accounts at the same time. So that way you have a consistent brand message across all your social media accounts all at once. All right? So we're going to deep dive into product hacking. So the course of what we're going to discuss today is we're going to start with product hacking, then we're going to get into growth hacking, then press, then funding. Is everyone following me? You can keep up with the pace? Good. All right, so we're going to start with product hacking. You can't have a business unless you have a good product, plain and simple, right? So let's talk about that. How many non-technical founders are here right now? Raise your hand. Don't be shy. I used to be one too. All right. How many are technical? I'm guessing the rest of you? All right. Both of you are going to love this because I think communication can really be a lot better if people are more technical, especially when it comes to building a product and knowing how to scale. So I'm going to talk about different ways to build your product with code, without code, or if you want to hire someone, okay? So we're going to talk about that. So let's get started with the basics. When it comes to building a product, you need to know your plan, right? So a lot of times people think of all the different features they want to build for their product, but have no rubric as to, okay, how am I going to release this information? What version should I do? My best advice for first-time founders is think about all the creative craziness that you want to put in your product, write it out on paper so you get it out of your system, and then scale it back, right? So if you already thought of all the different strategies and information that you want to build in your product, you scale it back to the first feature, and then you launch that. By having the release dates as well, you also align it with your business development plan, so that way you know when do you need to reach out to press reporters, when do you need to fundraise. By having that beta plan laid out, you're automatically giving your team a metric and deadline as to when to build out the next product interface. Another thing to keep in mind is a lot of people underestimate the cost of building the app from scratch, so I want you guys to highlight these two articles. They're really good in terms of running through the gamut about how much money it costs to not even build a product, but also the time and the length it takes to actually get a product to scale. Another thing to keep in mind of is that when it comes to building a product, there are three core options to do it without code. You can leverage an app maker platform and you do it yourself. You could also leverage an app maker platform and pay for someone to do it, or you could use WordPress. I'm sure a lot of people haven't known that you can actually build a web app with WordPress and plugins, and we'll talk about that later on. But my advice for beginners is to actually go through the content I'm going to tell you about in the next couple of minutes. Go through each one. Even if you pick one over the other, go through each one of them, and then once you do your due diligence, you pick which one is the course of action based on your resources, your budget, and what you want to do, okay? So let's get started with building an app without code. So Tara Reid is a big influencer in this space. I'm sure one or two of you might have heard of her talks, but she's able to make millions without building a product with code. And so she talks about all the tools and resources she leveraged to do that. And she has a whole library of resources that you could leverage. So I highly suggest that you look at her TED Talk video as to how she was able to build her product and all the resources that she has available to founders in the ecosystem. Next thing to think about, aside from influencers, in terms of building an app without code, is looking at these app maker platforms. So now there are thousands of app maker platforms across the web that you can leverage, but these four are notorious. iBuild app is one that the government has used on and off. Good app maker, it was just acquired by Google, so you have the whole suite of Google to help you with that app maker platform. And if you get overwhelmed, you're not sure what features do these apps have, what kind of resources do they have available, there's a top 10 review that happens every single year that reviews thousands of top app maker platforms around the world. So that way, they already did the due diligence for you. You don't have to figure it out from scratch, okay? Next thing to think about is building without code, which is pretty much with WordPress.org. Now, please understand the difference between WordPress.org versus WordPress.com. .com doesn't have as much flexibility as .org, so make sure that if you are building an app with WordPress that you're leveraging .org. Now, the fundamental thing to think about is that they already have themes set up in place. There are millions of different themes that you can leverage, and there are also thousands of different plugins to make your site functionable. The amount of combinations available to you is overwhelming, right? And so pretty much you can leverage sites like WP Beginner, to be able to help guide you as to how to actually build any idea that you're thinking about. So maybe you want to build the next Twitter, maybe you want to build the next Facebook. It will walk you through the process of what plugins to think about to build that web app from scratch. Now, I'm biased. I actually think people should actually learn how to code. The reason why I'm so biased, as you can hear, my baby girl's in the room. I learned how to code while I was pregnant. And so there is no excuse for anyone in the room. You can learn how to code. I did it, okay? And one of the best ways I learned how to code for free using all these different tools and resources. So I'm gonna talk about how to learn how to code for free and how to learn how to code if you got the money in the bank. So let's talk about for free. So Code Academy is my absolute favorite. Free code camp, Skillshare, YouTube. There's a great blog article titled 45 Places to Learn How to Code for Free. A really good set of resources for you to learn how to code in up to 8 weeks or less, okay? Now, if you have a little bit of money and you want more guidance, maybe you don't want to try to figure it all out by yourself, onemonth.com has been featured across press and media features from all over the world, but pretty much helping you build a product with code in under 30 days or less. So if you're trying to get that MVP up and running, they'll be able to walk you through it. Now, if you have the budget, there are boot camps for this as well. They range from anywhere from $5K to $15,000. Maybe you have the money, maybe you want to, get more technical into that expertise. But if you're just trying to build MVP, what I would do is actually go to the curriculum, copy and paste, and use that as your rubric using the free tools that I just stated, right? So that way you have a guidebook to be able to help you through the process. But fundamentally, whatever option you use when it comes to building a product, whether it's with or without code, you need to be able to capture the testimonial experiences. The reason why Vendedy, my company, was able to scale so efficiently is because we had so much content information around people using our product, testimonials, videos. Even when people are commenting on your social media pages, like, hey, just tried your app, love it, screenshot that and put that on your site. So that way you have validation. So even if you can't get the testimonials from scratch, you have activity on your site for people to monitor about your product. And just some inspiration for those who think that it's not possible, Instagram already did it. The founder was non-technical. He learned how to code during nights and weekends and was able to raise a 500K seed amount before even finding a technical founder. And mind you, he did this without the tools and resources I just told you about today. So there's literally no excuse. And I already told you I did it while I was pregnant. So I hope to hear some more technical founders down the road. All right? So, break point. How's everyone feeling? Is everyone good? That was product hacking, okay? So again, don't overwhelm yourself. You'll be able to get access to this on souffrantntim.com. Tweet about it through Startup Grind at startupgrind.com if you're loving what is happening right now, because we're about to move into growth hacking. Because after you build a product, you need customers. So let's get into that. So we're gonna go over pretty much a little bit basic about where growth hacking started, how it all began, because I think there's too much of a buzz phrase around it. People don't even know what resources to leverage. And then we're going to go deep dive into some different really unique growth hacking strategies that you could think of to get access to your customers. So let's get into that. So where did it all begin? So Seth Ellis is like the original OG growth hacker. He's the one that coined it back in 2010. He has a site where he shares his resources about it. And just to give you a fundamental sense of what growth hacking is, it's not magic, okay? When you see this viral growth happening, like, oh my God, they just had the right product and the right influencers to help them out. It is not magic. It actually is actual work to get virally come to your product and use it and reference it. Pretty much is experimentation. So you're figuring out the smartest and easiest way to get as many eyeballs to your product as possible and use it as a distribution and exhausting that distribution metric to repeat it over and over and over till you're exhausted and try a new outlet, right? So that's pretty much what you're doing with growth hacking. That's the reason why you need to make sure that you're maximizing each source and then optimizing for more resources along the world. Now, of course, there are a lot of growth hackers out there. A lot of them have different insights as to how to build your company with users, but some of the original influencers in this space, if you guys has anyone heard about Neil Patel, Seth Godin, Nicole and Rand? Very popular names. What I like about what they're doing is, as well, they also have a content library of free resources around this as well. They also do monthly webinars that you guys could follow. So even if this is overwhelming to take in, you can also sign in for their webinars or their newsletters to track it all, okay? Now, talk about where you could start. So one of my favorite PDFs about this is on QuickSpouts. It's a 102-page document guide that goes over all the different things you need to understand about growth hacking before you become a growth hacker. So if you need a place to start there. Second, you might want to be able to talk to mentors, and maybe you're struggling with getting more users for one of the traction metrics that we're going to talk about later on. Then definitely try to leverage growthhackers.com. They have monthly Ask Me Anything sessions, which really helps because anytime you do these sessions, you're able to communicate and ask questions, ask for insights, and even if you miss those sessions, they have video recordings for you to be able to access after. Okay? And of course, there are top blogs like XC Engine that does really great articles around growth hacking. One of the most popular ones is 100 Random Growth Hacks to Build Your Company. So if you need a place to get started and you're feeling overwhelmed, these are 3 resources and tools that you can leverage. Now, Dave McCurry opened up the line of speakers for Startup Grind just yesterday, and 500 Startups, one of the differentiating factor across all accelerators is the fact they focus on growth hacking. And if you didn't know, at the end of every batch, they actually have something called Marketing Hell Week, where literally for an entire week, they live stream all their best influencers and growth hackers online to share insights, resources, videos, PDFs, documentation, all for free. If you notice, I already talked about early on why Combinator releases this content for free. 500 Startups does this as well. So if you need access to real thought leaders in this space, get signed up for Marketing Hell Week. You can find it probably at growth.500.co. Okay? So we already talked about Seth Godin, but pretty much a good 3 ingredients when it comes to growth hacking is making sure that you have a product that people want. A lot of times people think that, you could try to get users before you have a product. If it's not a good product, no one's going to care, because not only do you want to get users to your product, but you want them to be engaged enough to talk about it, right? So once you do that, make sure you're tracking every metric that you're doing. So plan out every user. So let's say, for example, you're going to use Twitter and Facebook and SEO to gain access to users. What is your expectation? Are you trying to get 5,000 down one channel and 1,000 down another channel? Make sure you're optimizing your team to know which one is actually working. That's why in the beginning I talked about having Google Analytics, because you need to track where your traffic is coming from and what they do when they get to your site, right? So always have an Excel spreadsheet to be able to understand what's going on with traffic coming to your site. And once you do that, keep in mind that there are many different ways to do product growth hacking, but the first thing is to optimize your product. So a lot of people know about Dropbox already, yes? So the old way of just saying, hey, like if you use my product, refer customers and you get a discount doesn't really work anymore. You have to integrate the experience of someone wants to share about your product into it, right? So what they did was, if you shared information about your Dropbox, you got more gigabyte space. So it was organic. You didn't need to follow up with the customer service team or anything. It was organic. So if you could embed that into your product, that's probably the best way to get viral users to your product. Next thing to think about is site optimization. People are not forgiving anymore. If it takes too long for your site to build, you will lose customers. Your bounce rate will go through the roof. So you don't have to figure it out for yourself. You could pretty much run a check on using Google Page Insights. It's a really great way for them to scan your entire website and they give you an actual PDF report as to what's going wrong, what's going right, and ways you can improve, okay? Step 3, once you have a good product that's integrated and you optimize your site, think of actually submitting your content to different places. I'm not going to go over all the ones that is on the site right now, but one thing I will say is leverage Cura. Everyone knows about Cura. It's a question platform. Try to find your customers asking questions about your product. So many times, let's say you're a travel company and someone say, how can I find the best travel resources for my company? You could say, well, you could consider doing this, you could consider doing that. And by the way, our website has all these different resources. Here's the link. And you can see organically within an hour, people coming to your site just because you're placing an answer on a question on Cura. So that's one thing when it comes to site submissions, leveraging those type of platforms. And of course, end with validation. So if you're a speaker, if you're traveling the world, if you're getting press mentions or even blog mentions, make sure that you put that on your site. A lot of times founders have really good partnerships, really great exposure, but they don't talk about that on their site. They talk about it to investors, but they don't talk about it on their site. You need to brag, right? Because people actually look for that. They look for those key markers to make sure that, okay, this is a legit company. I need to optimize to use this product, okay? And just for word of thought to close on growth hacking, one thing I would say is that when you see something that's virally being shared across the internet, there's a lot of work that goes into that. It's not magic. There's SEO strategy, there's content strategy, there's email marketing, there's so many different moving parts. But as long as you pick what strategy works for you in the beginning and just optimize that, exhaust that resources and try a new channel, you'll start to realize what is the best channel for you in terms of building your company based on your resources. And keep in mind, all of these different resources that I share with you is very optimal, and it's easy for even one person to do it by themselves. So it's not complicated. All right? So how is everyone feeling? Because we're going to get into press hacking. All right, so everyone's keeping up? All right, so we're going to get some press now. So one thing I will say when it comes to press, you got to have a goal. So what I mean by goal, you can't just target any press reporter that you see on the street, right? So are you trying to talk about your story? Are you trying to announce a platform to get users? Are you trying to talk about post a platform? Now you want to talk about the testimonials. Have a target reason as to why you're reaching out to reporters. So for example, if it's a story, give visual images about your story. So my first company was Vendedy, which connects travelers to street markets. So I gave a strong image of me street vending when I was a little kid with my father, right? That tells a story. And sometimes you could send collages of those images so you could guide them as to what the story you're trying to tell. So if you notice here, I actually showcased 3 generations of street vendors in my family. So I showed that my grandmother was a street vendor, I was a street vendor, and my mom before me. So there's a storyline. So I'm helping them guide through the story. So whenever you're reaching out to reporters, don't just tell them this is your story. Give them visual cues and give collages where need be. So that way you can connect the dots together and faster. And keep in mind, when you're reaching out to reporters, they need to know why you're different. And so sometimes your story is more important than the product. All right, so always remember that, because you're always going to have other competitors that might have a better product than you, but no one can have the same story. So make sure you maximize for your own story when it comes to press. So in terms of press hacks, that just scaled and went whoop, whoop. I know off the top of my head, so I'm just going to get started with press hacks. So the first thing that you need to do is, a lot of times people forget that before you reach out to press, you need to have the content ready. So instead of just sending an email to press reporters, make sure you already have a version of your press release, okay? So that's step 1. Step 2, you can actually write out the article that you want them to publish about you, and they can either edit it and publish it. Right? So that way, if the person doesn't have time to go through the interview process and get to know your story, they already have content from your articles to maximize the published content as well. Another thing to make sure is, if you don't have a press kit on your website that's easily for people to download, you need to do that ASAP, right? And pretty much a downloadable link on your site, it could be just the content access, a photo of the founder, images about your product, testimonials, a video that they could download, something that's very easy for them to download immediately. So that way they don't even need to reach out to you to ask you questions. They could do due diligence on their own and get the content that they need, and that way you get press. And by the way, sometimes you might be shocked at how many people are writing about you and you don't even know. So put a Google alert on your name and your company. So that way you could track any information that's happening for you. All right? Thank you. So I think we're back on cue. Yep. Okay, so first things first when it comes to press hacking is make sure you have a content strategy plan. Won't go over the details, but make sure you have a content strategy to build the buzz around your product. The next thing to think about is, once you have a content strategy, I already talked about this, make sure you have the content readily available. And one rule of thumb, embed the press release content into the email so that way people don't have to download. It's very annoying when people have to download your press release. If it's already embedded in the email, it makes it a lot easier, okay? Another thing to think about is to give them the content access, not just photos, but actually put the validation around it. So if you notice right here, you have the speaker profile and what your expertise is, or you can give them content where you've been featured in press before. A lot of times, if they see that there's buzz around you through blogs and other press releases, it keeps a viral effect there, so you get more and more press over time, right? Next thing to note is pretty much making sure that you can self-publish. How are you going to ask press reporters to write about you if you don't even write about your own self? Right? So the first thing I would say is publish on your blog, and then 24 hours later, copy and paste and put it into LinkedIn posts, put it into Facebook Medium, and also put it into Medium and Facebook posts, okay? So that way you have new distribution outlets for your product. Does that make sense, everyone? So don't just publish on your site, actually put it in all the mediums so people can find you. Other thing to think about too, this also helps with your SEO rankings. You can also turn it into a SlideShare, right? SlideShare also helps with rankings, and that's automatically tied to your LinkedIn account, all right? Next thing to think about, before you reach out to reporters, think about your network. So a lot of times people think that cold emails to reporters is the way to go, but let's say you graduate from an alma mater, they have access to press release already. Press reporters within your network. So if I want to reach out to my alma mater college, maybe I could go speak there and make sure that they have press available to get my story out there. It's to their benefit fit to make sure that you have as much exposure as possible because you represent the school. As a graduate, you're successful, and they want the story out there. So always make a list of your network first. Reach out to them, get the grassroots up and running before reaching out to press. Now we're gonna get into bloggers. So bloggers are a great way to get traction on your company. I usually say press gives you validation, bloggers give you actual customers because they are actually targeting the niche consumer base that you want for your product. So really important to be able to leverage all these different platforms. And these are great ways to even build a relationship so over time, you could also write about their products as well. Now, I know this is the one that everyone's waiting for is how to actually get to press. All right, so I'll get to it. So, media hit list. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but every single publication gives you an opportunity to submit a news tip. You could do that on your behalf, okay? So that way you're able to talk about what your product is, what's going on in your store, and you can submit it to that outlet. Help a Reporter Out is another great platform for this as well. The same way you're looking for reporters, reporters are also looking for great stories. So you could be able to get access to that information as well. Other things to think about is Yahoo News. If you make it on Yahoo News, you go viral real quick. So you can submit your press releases for free to different platforms on your own. You don't need to hire a press team or a network to do that for you, okay? Next thing to think about is to leverage paid marketing. One thing I would say, if you are gonna use ad spend around press releases, make sure that you're actually optimizing for the best social media channel. Facebook Boost is a good thing to maximize and use, but keep in mind that if you do that, that you're actually forwarding it to different groups. So if you post anything in one place, forward it into groups where you know your target customers might be. So for me, as a travel company, I'm involved in probably like 30 plus different travel groups so I could share content about what we're doing across social media pages. And finally, always have the logos displayed on your site. It doesn't matter even if it's a blog logo, put it on your site because these mentions actually gives you the social proof to get people to want to get access to you even more, all right? Final one, guys. We're going to go into funding and then we're going to conclude, all right? So everyone's ready for the last one? All right, everyone's getting tired. I can hear it. Just like, whew. Imagine how I feel. Trying to get all this content in for you guys in 25 minutes. All right, so let's get into funding. This is my favorite part. You're gonna see me come alive in this one because I like free money, man. This is awesome. So I'm gonna talk about exactly how I was able to get close to $250,000 in 6 months for free just by pitching. So we're gonna talk about that. So pretty much I wanna talk about your mindset, creative ways to think about funding and getting access to resources. And then we're gonna talk about just one of the 5 buckets, which is around competitions, prizes, and grants. So first things first. Get creative with how you get access to money. How many of you in this room have access to Visa and MasterCard? Raise your hand. Practically all of you. They're giving away money, you guys don't even know about it, right? I myself actually won a $15K MasterCard prize, and all I did was go into a booth and pitch for a minute. And not only did you get the capital, you get the brand prestige, you get the partnership, it's a really great opportunity. So think about any bill that you pay, turn that into funding, whether it's a magazine subscription, FedEx, by the way, the deadline is coming next week, 25K giveaway for FedEx for a 1-minute video. MasterCard, whatever you could think of that you pay bills for, think about when they have their timelines for giveaways and prizes, okay? Now, next thing I will say is like there's 5 buckets to get access to funding. I'm not gonna go over all of them today because we don't have time, but the one thing I will say is prizes and grants are a great way to get access to capital and experiment. So I'm gonna talk about that. So, remember earlier I talked about making sure that you list your company on these databases, Unodal, F-Success, Crunchbase. Well, F-Success and Unodal are notorious for having really great free prizes and grants and giveaways every single year. So one thing that I did to pretty much optimize my time is that I literally spent a weekend, I didn't talk to anybody and sat down and looked for every single application I was eligible for, no lie. No one could hear from me for that whole weekend. And so let's say I had January, 30 applications due, February, 40 applications due, March, 20 applications due. I would list it out to a T, put the dates, the links, and everything, right? And then the next week after, I'll say, okay, for the month of January to March, I'm submitting all the applications and making sure I'm saving all the answers. Because eventually you can start to copy and edit and adjust to applications. But the best part is, if you get to the second round and you're able to pitch in person, you end up knowing all the answers to your questions that you need to do so that way you can win the competition. And always keep track of this information because the red is obviously all the rejections that I got, yellow is the one where we were the semifinalists, and pink was the one that we actually got. So a lot of no's before we got to yes. But even the ones I got rejected from, I sent them an email and said, 3 months later, this is where we're at. So they blasted us amongst their newsletter as an update. So I got free marketing from that. So whether you're winning or lose, you're still winning. Make sense? So make sure you maximize the strategy. Other resources to think about, make sure you're not building a pitch deck from scratch. There are pitch decks that already won prizes and grants before, so leverage these to be able to get the word out there. And finally, I'll conclude by just saying that prizes and grants is just one way to get the story out there. There's different ways to get capital, and definitely track my information so I could give you more insights on that. But with that, I will conclude and say, if you loved what you got today, definitely check me out at souffrantntim.com. I'm also the chapter director for Dubai, so I'm heavily involved with this. Really happy I got a chance to share all 100 of those random hacks. If you have questions, I'm here and also here tomorrow. So thank you.